Millionaire sees a homeless woman with twins, then realizes who she is. A millionaire stops in his tracks when he sees a homeless woman with twin daughters. But when he looks closer, his entire world shatters. A dimly lit street. Rain drizzles against the cold pavement. A mother huddles with her daughters in a dark alley, shielding them from the wind. A sleek black car slows to a stop. A man steps out, tall, powerful. His gaze locks onto the woman. His breath catches. She wasn't just another homeless woman. She was his first love. And the moment he saw her, the past he tried to forget came rushing back. One question, one moment, and nothing would ever be the same again. Stay until the end, because this story is just beginning. Ethan Montgomery built his empire on power, prestige, and control. But one night, on the rain-soaked streets, he sees someone who makes his carefully built world crumble. Emily Carter. The woman he once loved, now homeless. Clutching twin daughters in her arms. She tries to run, but Ethan won't let her disappear again. As the truth unravels, he learns the twins are his, and the past isn't as buried as he thought. But reuniting won't be easy. Emily carries scars from their past, and Ethan must fight not only for her trust but also against his powerful family. Who will do anything to erase her from his life once more? When love and power collide, Ethan faces the ultimate choice. Risk everything for the family he never knew he had, or lose them forever. Some pasts can't be forgotten, and some loves never fade. Stay tuned for the most unexpected reunion of a lifetime. Hello everyone, I'm the narrator. Today, I bring you a millionaire love story. A love that rises above all challenges. Where hearts find each other in a world of luxury. True wealth isn't just money. It's love that lasts. Do you believe in destined love? If so, like, share, comment, and subscribe to Millionaire Love Stories for more heart-touching stories. Now, let's step into this story together. The dream of a home. The cold night wrapped around them like an unrelenting shadow. Lily sat against the rough brick wall, arms curled tightly around her little sister. Sophie, their mother, Emily, held them close, shielding them from the biting wind as best as she could. The city's lights flickered in the distance, a world away from the alley they called home. Sophie shivered, pressing her small frame closer to Lily's warmth. "Lily, do you think we'll ever have a real home?" she asked in a whisper, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of passing cars. Lily tightened her grip, feeling the thinness of Sophie's worn-out sweater beneath her fingers. "Of course, we will," she said, though the certainty in her voice wavered. She had learned to be strong for Sophie, to hide her own fears behind promises that she wasn't sure she could keep. For as long as they could remember, the streets had been their world. The three of them, Emily, Lily, and Sophie, moved from one shelter to another. Sometimes lucky enough to find a warm place for a night, other times left to sleep under the open sky. Hunger was a constant companion, gnawing at their stomachs. But the worst part was the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible in a city full of people. Sophie's big brown eyes always searched the world around her with an innocent curiosity. She would watch children playing in the park, their parents standing nearby, laughing, and holding them close. She would glance at store windows filled with Christmas decorations, imagining what it must be like to wake up in a house with a tree and presents. "Mama, when will we have a home?" Sophie would ask, hope flickering in her gaze. Emily would always smile, stroking Sophie's hair. "Soon, sweetheart, we just have to keep believing." Lily, at 10 years old, was old enough to understand the weight behind her mother's words. Emily worked hard, picking up small jobs when she could, but finding stability was nearly impossible. Every day was a struggle, but Emily never let them see her despair. That night, the city was alive with the hum of celebration. People in elegant coats walked past, their laughter ringing through the air. Lily watched them, her grip tightening around Sophie's shoulders. To them, she and Sophie were nothing more than shadows, just another pair of forgotten children in the night. Then, the sound of a car door shutting caught Lily's attention. She turned her head, spotting a sleek black car parked near the alley. A man stepped out, his tall figure illuminated by the streetlights. He was dressed in a fine coat, his shoes polished, his presence commanding. But it wasn't his wealth that made Lily stare, it was the way he looked at their mother. Sophie, always observant, noticed too. "Lily, that man, He looks like he knows Mama. Lily frowned. She had never seen him before. But something in his expression unsettled her. He wasn't just looking at their mother, he was staring. As if seeing someone he had lost a long time ago. Emily stiffened, her body going rigid, and she instinctively pulled Lily and Sophie closer. The man took a slow step forward. His face unreadable. Emily? His voice was deep, filled with something Lily couldn't quite understand. Surprise? Pain? Regret? Emily's grip on them tightened. Come on, girls, we have to go, she whispered, urgency lacing her voice. Sophie hesitated, her gaze flickering between her mother and the man. Mama, do you know him? She asked innocently. Emily didn't answer. She turned, leading them away quickly, her pace almost desperate. But before they could disappear into the night, the man's voice called after them again. Emily, wait. Lily turned her head slightly, stealing one last glance at the stranger. His eyes were locked onto her mother, a storm of emotions swirling within them. And in that moment, Lily knew, this was no ordinary man. Something about him would change their lives forever. Session 1. The Strange Man. The night air was thick with the scent of rain. The distant hum of traffic muffled by the cold. Lily's small fingers clenched tightly around Sophie's hand as they hurried down the empty street. Their mother, Emily, walked briskly ahead, her shoulders tense, her eyes darting anxiously from side to side. It wasn't the first time they had to leave a place in a hurry. But something about this night felt different. Sophie struggled to keep up, her breath coming out in small gasps. Mama, slow down, she pleaded. I can't run so fast. Emily finally stopped near an old street lamp, turning to look at her daughters. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. She knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from Sophie's flushed face. I need you both to listen to me, she said, her voice low but firm. No matter what happens, stay close to me. Don't talk to that man. Don't believe anything he says. Lily swallowed hard. But who is he? Mama? Why was he looking at you like that? Emily hesitated, the lines of worry deepening on her face. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we stayed together. Lily wasn't satisfied with that answer. But she knew better than to push. She could feel the tension radiating from her mother. The kind of fear that meant danger was close. She turned to Sophie, who was clutching the hem of Emily's coat. Confusion etched on her delicate features. Before Emily could say anything more, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed against the pavement. A deep voice called out, hesitant yet firm, Emily, please, wait. Lily's heart pounded as she turned to see the man from before standing just a few feet away. In the dim glow of the street lamp, he looked less imposing than before. His dark coat billowed slightly in the wind, his face a mixture of exhaustion and something else, something that made Lily's stomach twist. Emily stood, her body rigid. You need to leave us alone. The man's eyes flickered to Lily and Sophie. He took a slow step forward, his expression unreadable. I didn't know, Emily, he said quietly. I swear, I didn't know. Emily's hands curled into fists. And that changes nothing. Lily glanced at Sophie, who was staring up at the man with wide, unblinking eyes. There was a strange pull in Sophie's gaze, as if she was trying to understand something even she couldn't put into words. Who are you? Lily asked, surprising even herself with the boldness in her voice. The man looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing something familiar. My name is Ethan Montgomery, he said after a pause. His gaze softened. And I think I might be your father. Silence. The world seemed to stop for a moment, the distant sounds of the city fading into nothingness. Lily felt Sophie's fingers tighten around hers, felt her mother's sharp intake of breath. But all Lily could focus on was the man before them. Ethan, his words hanging heavy in the air. No, Emily said, shaking her head. You don't get to say that. You don't get to show up now and act like you care. Ethan took another step forward, but Emily quickly moved in front of her daughters, her stance protective. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said, his voice quieter now. He exhaled, raking a hand through his dark hair. Emily, I had no idea. If I had known, you would have what? Emily cut him off, her voice laced with years of pain. You would have been there? You expect me to believe that? Lily's mind was spinning. A father. They had never spoken about their father before. Whenever she asked, Emily would just say that some families were different and that all they needed was each other. But now this man was standing in front of them, claiming to be something she had never dared to imagine. Sophie tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Mama, is he telling the truth?" Emily closed her eyes for a moment before kneeling down in front of them. "You don't need to worry about this, sweetheart," she whispered, cupping Sophie's face gently. "Nothing has to change." But Sophie's gaze shifted back to Ethan. "If you're our father, why weren't you with us?" Ethan's face fell, and for the first time, Lily saw something break in his expression. He knelt as well, leveling himself with the girls. "I didn't know you existed," he admitted. "If I had, I would have looked for you." Lily didn't know what to believe. The truth felt slippery, uncertain. She looked at Emily, who was watching Ethan with the kind of guarded expression that told Lily there was so much more to this story than they knew. "I need you to leave," Emily said after a long silence. "Please, Ethan." Ethan hesitated, glancing at Lily and Sophie one last time. There was regret in his eyes, something deep and raw. "I just want to help," he said. "Please, let me help." Emily shook her head. "We don't need your help." Lily wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe they could be okay on their own. But deep down, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Maybe things could be better. Ethan exhaled, taking a slow step back. "If you ever change your mind, I'll be here." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Emily let out a shaky breath, pulling Lily and Sophie close. "Come on, girls, let's go." As they walked away, Sophie whispered, "Do you think he really meant it?" Lily didn't answer, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what to believe. Session 2. Life in a strange house. Lily had never seen a house so large in her life. It loomed before them, its towering white pillars gleaming under the glow of golden lanterns. The scent of fresh flowers drifted from the garden, mixing with the crisp night air. It didn't feel real. None of it did. Sophie, standing beside her, clutched Lily's hand tightly, her wide eyes filled with both wonder and fear. "Is this a castle?" she whispered. Emily's grip on their shoulders tightened, her body stiff as she faced the man who had brought them here, Ethan Montgomery. He stood a few steps away, watching them with a careful expression. "This is my home," Ethan said gently, "and if you'd let me, I'd like it to be yours too." Emily exhaled sharply. "This isn't a discussion, Ethan. I told you, you don't need my help." Ethan finished for her, his gaze softened as it landed on the two little girls. "But they do." Lily looked up at her mother, sensing her hesitation. Emily always made decisions quickly, always knew exactly what to do. But now, she seemed uncertain, her gaze flickering between Ethan and the heavy doors of the house. "We'll just stay for the night," she finally murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "That's all." Sophie tugged on Lily's sleeve. "Do you think there's food inside?" Lily pressed her lips together, refusing to let herself be hopeful. Hope had never gotten them anywhere before. A woman in a pressed black uniform opened the door before they even stepped forward. "Mr. Montgomery, welcome home." Her gaze flickered over to the three of them, her polite smile tightening slightly. "And, guests." Ethan nodded. "Maria, this is Emily, and these are Lily and Sophie." Maria didn't hesitate, her years of service evident in the way she masked her curiosity. "Shall I prepare the guest rooms, sir?" Ethan hesitated, glancing at Emily before nodding. "Yes, something comfortable." The house was warm inside, too warm compared to the streets they had left behind. The air smelled of polished wood and something rich Lily couldn't quite place. The floors gleamed beneath their feet as they were led up a grand staircase, their footsteps muffled by a thick rug. Maria opened a door at the end of the hallway, revealing a room larger than anywhere Lily had ever slept. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows against the walls. A massive bed sat in the middle, covered in layers of soft blankets. Sophie let go of Lily's hand and ran straight to the bed, climbing onto it with an excited giggle. "It's so soft," she whispered in awe. Lily hesitated at the doorway, her fingers curling into fists. It didn't feel right. They didn't belong here. Emily stepped inside but didn't relax. Her arms remained crossed, her posture guarded. "We'll be out of your way by morning," she told Maria, her voice clipped. Maria only nodded. "There are fresh clothes in the wardrobe, and I'll have some food sent up." She turned to leave but then paused, glancing at the girls. "It's a good thing," she murmured, barely loud enough for Lily to hear. For them. Then she was gone, leaving them alone in the silence of the grand room. Sophie was already burrowing under the blankets, her tiny body disappearing into the mountain of pillows. Lily, however, remained at the door. Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. Lily, come inside. Lily shook her head. We shouldn't be here, Mama. Emily looked exhausted. Just for tonight. Lily didn't believe her. Not really. Things were changing, shifting in ways she didn't understand. She wasn't sure if she liked it. Still, when she saw Sophie's peaceful face nestled in the pillows, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Later that night, Lily couldn't sleep. The room was too quiet, too still. The bed beneath her was too soft, unfamiliar in a way that made her chest ache. She was used to the hard pavement, the distant hum of the city. Here, everything felt like another world. She sat up and glanced at Sophie, who was curled up beside her, lost in dreams. Emily lay on the other side, her breathing slow and steady. But even in sleep, her face remained tense. Lily slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent against the thick carpet. She crept to the door and eased it open, stepping into the dimly lit hallway. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural. She wandered down the hall, her fingers grazing the polished wooden banister as she peered over the edge of the staircase. Below, a soft glow flickered from the main living area. Someone was still awake. Curiosity got the better of her. She padded downstairs, her heart pounding a little faster with every step. When she reached the bottom, she peeked around the corner. Ethan was sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He held something in his hands, a small photograph, worn at the edges. Lily recognized her mother in the image immediately. She looked younger, happier, and in her arms, two tiny babies. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Ethan sighed, rubbing his fingers over the picture as if it held all the answers he had been searching for. I missed so much, he murmured to himself. So much time lost. Lily took a cautious step forward. The floor creaked under her weight, and Ethan's head snapped up. His eyes met hers, surprised but not unkind. You should be asleep, he said softly. Lily hesitated, then crossed her arms. So should you. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Fair enough. Silence stretched between them. Lily shifted her weight, debating whether she should go back to bed. But something about the way Ethan was looking at her, like she mattered, like she wasn't just another shadow in the night, made her pause. Finally, she asked, "Is it true?" Ethan knew what she meant. He placed the photograph face down on the table. "Yes," he said, "it's true." Lily's throat tightened. She didn't know what to do with that information. "I don't expect you to believe me right away," Ethan continued, his voice gentle, "but I want to be here. If you'll let me." Lily looked at him for a long moment before whispering, "We don't need anyone." Ethan nodded slowly, as if he understood. "Maybe not, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve someone." Lily didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked back up the stairs, her mind spinning with questions she wasn't ready to ask. In the darkness of the grand house, she crawled back into bed beside Sophie, listening to the soft crackle of the fire downstairs. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself wonder, just for a moment, what it would be like to have a home. Session 3. Are people really kind? The morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting golden streaks across the polished wooden floor. Lily stirred first, her body tense as she adjusted to her unfamiliar surroundings. The warmth of the thick blankets felt foreign, almost suffocating in its softness. She had spent too many nights curled up against Sophie on the hard pavement, using nothing but their mother's coat for warmth. She turned her head and saw Sophie still asleep, her small chest rising and falling steadily. Their mother lay beside them, her face peaceful for the first time in what felt like forever. Lily hesitated before slipping out of bed, careful not to wake either of them. The room was too big, too grand. The fire had burned low, leaving only a faint glow in the fireplace. A knock on the door made her jump. "Miss Lily?" A woman's voice, calm, polite. Lily rushed to the door, pulling it open just a crack. Maria, the housekeeper, stood outside with a tray of food. The scent of warm bread and eggs filled the hallway, making Lily's stomach tighten with hunger. "I brought breakfast," Maria said gently, holding up the tray. "Would you like to take it inside?" Lily hesitated. She wasn't used to kindness without conditions. On the streets, food always came with a price, sometimes a pitying glance, sometimes something worse. Her fingers clenched around the doorknob. Maria seemed to sense her hesitation. It's all right, sweetheart. No strings attached. Just a meal. Lily swallowed hard before nodding. She took the tray carefully and closed the door without another word. Sophie woke as soon as the smell of food filled the room. Her eyes lit up, and she scrambled up, rubbing her fists against her sleepy face. Lily, is that for us? Lily set the tray down on the bed, unsure if they were allowed to eat it. But their mother stirred then, blinking at the sight of the steaming food. Emily sighed, sitting up. Did Ethan send this? She asked, her voice wary. Lily shrugged. The lady, Maria, brought it. Emily glanced toward the door, her jaw tightening before she exhaled. We should eat before it gets cold. Sophie didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed a slice of bread and took a big bite, humming happily. It's so good, she mumbled through a mouthful. Lily ate more cautiously, but the warmth of the food melted something inside her. She hadn't had a full meal in so long. It almost felt dangerous to enjoy it. After breakfast, Ethan appeared in the doorway, looking slightly hesitant. How did you sleep? He asked, directing the question at Emily. Emily crossed her arms, her walls immediately back up. Fine. Ethan nodded. I was hoping to take the girls around the house today. Let them see the garden. Maybe introduce them to some of the staff. Emily's eyes narrowed. You think that's a good idea? Ethan's gaze flickered to Lily and Sophie. I think they deserve to feel safe. Emily looked like she wanted to argue, but she pressed her lips together and sighed. Fine, she muttered, but they stay in my sight. Ethan smiled faintly. Of course. The house was even bigger than Lily had imagined. Every hallway stretched endlessly, lined with paintings and grand furniture. Chandeliers hung from the ceilings, casting shimmering light across the marble floors. Sophie clung to Lily's hand, her excitement barely contained. This place is huge, she whispered. Do you think it has secret doors? Lily rolled her eyes. It's not a fairy tale. Sophie. Ethan led them outside to the gardens. The grass was vibrant green, stretching toward a large fountain in the center. Flowers of every color bloomed in perfect arrangements, and butterflies danced lazily in the air. Sophie gasped. It's like a dream. She ran ahead, twirling in the open space. Lily stayed close to Emily's side, wary of everything around them. A few staff members walked by, their eyes curious but polite. Some whispered to each other, their glances lingering just a second too long. They're talking about us, Lily muttered. Emily's expression darkened. They always do. Ethan must have noticed because he turned to Lily. This house has a lot of people in it, but not all of them matter, he said. Only the ones who care. Lily frowned, not sure if she believed that. Then, another voice interrupted them. What is this? A tall man in a crisp suit strode toward them, his sharp gaze settling on Ethan first before shifting to Emily and the girls. His face was lined with disapproval, his presence commanding. Lily instinctively moved closer to her mother. Ethan sighed. Charles, he greeted evenly. You're back. The man, Charles, looked at Emily with something unreadable in his gaze. I see you've brought guests. Emily stiffened. We were just leaving. But Charles wasn't done. His eyes landed on Lily and Sophie, scrutinizing them like they were intruders. Ethan, he said coolly. This is a mistake. Lily's fists clenched. She didn't like this man. Ethan's expression remained neutral, but there was an edge to his voice. They are my family. Charles let out a quiet chuckle, but it wasn't a warm sound. Is that what you think? Sophie, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. Are you Ethan's brother? She asked innocently. Charles's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. I am his father. Lily's stomach dropped. Ethan clenched his jaw. Charles, we can talk about this later. But Charles ignored him, his gaze sweeping over the girls once more. They don't belong here, he said bluntly, and neither does she. He nodded toward Emily. Sophie flinched. Lily stepped in front of her, her small body standing firm. We're not leaving. Charles arched an eyebrow. Is that so? Lily held her ground, but Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, gently pulling her back. They're staying, he said firmly. Charles exhaled sharply, his disapproval clear. This isn't over, he warned before turning on his heel and walking away. The moment he was gone, Sophie whispered, he's scary. Lily nodded. Yeah, he is. Ethan rubbed a hand over his face. I'm sorry about that. Emily sighed. This was a mistake. Ethan looked at her. No, it wasn't. Lily didn't know who to believe. But one thing was certain, this place wasn't as safe as it seemed. And not everyone wanted them here. Session 4. The arrival of a stranger. The tension from their encounter with Charles lingered in the air like a storm cloud. Even as they walked back inside, Lily felt the weight of his words pressing against her chest. She didn't know much about the man, but she knew one thing, he didn't want them here. And people like him usually got what they wanted. Sophie clung to Lily's hand, her earlier excitement over the grand house now dulled by the fear Charles had instilled. Lily, she whispered, her voice barely audible, do you think he'll make us leave? Lily swallowed hard. Not if I can help it. Ethan led them back inside, his expression tight. Emily walked beside him, her arms crossed over her chest. That didn't take long, she muttered under her breath. He won't do anything, Ethan assured her, though the stiffness in his jaw suggested he wasn't so sure. Charles likes to believe he controls everything. But he doesn't control me. Emily didn't look convinced. That's easy to say until he starts pulling strings. Lily didn't understand everything they were talking about. But she understood one thing. There was a war brewing between Ethan and Charles, and she and Sophie were caught in the middle. That night, Emily insisted on keeping the girls close. She had planned to leave the next morning, but Ethan convinced her to stay, at least until they figured out their next steps. Despite the unease in her mother's eyes, Lily could see the exhaustion settling in. She didn't want to admit it, but staying here, just for a little while, was safer than the streets. Sophie had fallen asleep quickly, her tiny frame curled beneath the thick blankets. But Lily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house. Then, somewhere in the distance, she heard something, a voice. She sat up, her breath catching. Carefully, she slipped out of bed, moving toward the door. Emily stirred but didn't wake. Lily pressed her ear against the wood, straining to hear. The voices were low, muffled by the thick walls. But she could make out Ethan's voice. And someone else's. Curious, she cracked the door open and peeked out. The hallway was dimly lit, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows against the walls. Lily tiptoed down the corridor, following the sound of the voices until she reached a partially open door. She hesitated, then leaned forward just enough to see inside. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, his back to her. Across from him was a man Lily had never seen before. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, with sharp features and a smirk that sent chills down Lily's spine. His eyes flickered toward Ethan, calculating, like a predator studying its prey. You always had a habit of making impulsive decisions, Ethan, the man said, his voice smooth but laced with something sinister. Bringing them here? That was a mistake. Ethan's shoulders tensed. I don't recall asking for your opinion. Ryan. Lily repeated the name in her head, committing it to memory. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. You think you can protect them? You think Charles is going to let this slide? They're my daughters, Ethan said, his voice low but firm. And I won't let anyone take them away from me. Ryan tilted his head. Your daughters? His smirk widened. Interesting. I don't remember you ever being a father before. Ethan exhaled sharply. Leave. Ryan's eyes darkened. You don't get to order me around. Montgomery, this isn't over. With that, he turned and walked toward the door. Lily's breath caught. He was coming her way. She scrambled back, pressing herself against the wall just as Ryan stepped into the hallway. For a moment, she thought he would pass her by. But then he stopped. Slowly, he turned his head, his gaze locking onto hers. A knowing smile crept onto his lips. Well, he murmured. What do we have here? Lily's heart pounded against her ribs. But she forced herself to stand her ground. Stay away from us, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan chuckled. Brave little thing, aren't you? Ethan appeared in the doorway behind him. Ryan, he warned. Go. Ryan didn't move right away. He held Lily's gaze for a long moment before finally stepping back. Sweet dreams, kid, he said before disappearing down the hallway. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. When he turned to Lily, his face softened. Are you okay? Lily nodded slowly. Who was that? Ethan hesitated. Someone you don't need to worry about. Lily wasn't sure she believed him. He knew about us. Ethan exhaled, kneeling so he was at her level. There are people in this house who don't want you here, he admitted, but I do, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you or Sophie. Lily searched his face for any sign of deception, but all she saw was sincerity. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. Come on, Ethan said gently. Let's get you back to bed. Lily followed him back to the room, slipping under the covers beside Sophie. As Ethan tucked the blankets around her, he whispered, "You're safe here, Lily." She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she wasn't sure if anywhere was truly safe. Session 5. Lies and Separation. Lily couldn't shake the uneasy feeling Ryan had left behind. His smirk, the way he had looked at her like he already knew something she didn't, it made her stomach churn. She didn't trust him. More than that, she didn't trust this house. The next morning, Emily insisted on keeping the girls close. She barely spoke at breakfast, her shoulders tight, her gaze flickering between Ethan and the entrance of the dining hall as if expecting someone to barge in at any moment. Sophie, unaware of the tension, ate happily, enjoying the food they had never had access to before. She swung her legs under the chair, smiling between bites. "Lily, isn't this the best breakfast ever?" Lily gave her a small nod but barely touched her plate. She was too busy watching Ethan, who looked deep in thought, his fork barely moving across his plate. Then, as if on cue, Ryan strolled in. The room fell silent as he walked toward the table, his presence unsettling even the staff members around them. He took a seat across from Ethan, his fingers tapping lazily against the polished wood. "Good morning," he said smoothly, flashing a grin. "What a lovely little family gathering." Emily's grip on her fork tightened. "What do you want?" Ryan feigned hurt. "Me? I'm just here for a friendly breakfast. Can't a man enjoy a meal in his own house?" Ethan's jaw tensed. "This isn't your house, Ryan." Ryan shrugged. "Semantics." His eyes flickered toward Lily and Sophie. "I was just thinking about how fascinating this situation is. How long do you think you can keep up this little fairy tale?" Emily pushed back her chair. "Come on, girls, we're leaving." Ryan didn't stop her. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice dropping just enough for only Ethan to hear. "You can't protect them forever." Lily wasn't sure what he meant, but the way Ethan's fists clenched told her it wasn't good. That afternoon, Lily and Sophie stayed close to their mother, avoiding the common areas of the house. But by midday, Sophie grew restless. "Can we go outside? Just for a little bit?" she pleaded, tugging on Emily's sleeve. Emily hesitated. "I don't know, sweetheart." Ethan, who had been silent for most of the day, finally spoke. "I can take them to the garden. Just for a little while." Emily looked like she wanted to refuse, but Sophie's hopeful eyes weakened her resolve. With a sigh, she nodded. "Not far, and not for long." Lily didn't want to go. She didn't trust this place, didn't trust Ryan, didn't trust anything about this situation. But she couldn't leave Sophie alone, so she followed as Ethan led them out to the garden. Sophie immediately ran ahead, chasing butterflies, her giggles echoing through the air. For a brief moment, things almost felt normal. "You don't have to be afraid all the time. You know," Ethan said softly, walking beside Lily. "I meant what I said. I want to help." Lily stared at him. "Why now?" she asked, voice quiet but firm. "Where were you before?" Ethan's steps faltered. "I didn't know." Lily didn't know if she believed him. Before she could say anything else, a sharp voice called out, making them both turn. "Well, isn't this a sweet picture?" Ryan stood by the entrance to the garden, a smug look on his face. And he wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit was beside him, holding a briefcase, his expression unreadable. Ethan's entire body tensed. "What is this?" Ryan smiled, looking too pleased with himself. "Just a little legal matter. Nothing major." The man beside him pulled out a stack of documents. "I have court orders stating that Ryan Montgomery is legally allowed to file for guardianship over the children." Considering the unstable situation of their birth mother, Lily felt the world shift beneath her feet. "What?" Emily appeared at the door, her face drained of color. "That's not possible. You can't just." "Oh, but we can." Ryan's grin widened. "This is just the beginning." Sophie, sensing something was wrong, ran to Emily, clutching her leg. "Mama?" Ethan stepped forward. "I won't let this happen." Ryan chuckled. "Then you'd better start preparing for a fight, brother, because this is only the first move." He glanced down at the papers. It would be a shame if the girls ended up in the wrong hands. Wouldn't it? Emily wrapped her arms around Sophie and Lily, her voice shaking. Over my dead body. Ryan tilted his head. That can be arranged. Ethan moved so fast that Lily barely saw it. 1 second he was standing beside her. The next, he had Ryan shoved up against the stone wall, his hands gripping his collar. You will not touch them. You will not go near them. Ethan's voice was ice. Do you understand me? Ryan's smirk didn't falter. We'll see what the law has to say about that. The man in the suit cleared his throat. This can be settled in court. Until then, I suggest you prepare yourselves. With that, they turned and left, their footsteps echoing against the stone path. Emily exhaled shakily, holding her daughters so tightly that Lily could barely breathe. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Looking at Emily, we need to fight this. We need to prove they belong with us. Emily nodded, her eyes burning with determination. Then we fight. Lily looked up at her mother. Then at Ethan. Then at the empty path where Ryan had just been. For the first time, she realized, this wasn't just about staying in a house anymore. This was about survival. Session 6. The legal battle. Will they be separated? The next few days passed in a blur of tension and whispered conversations. Emily barely left Ethan's office, spending hours with lawyers and making frantic phone calls. The once grand estate, which had seemed like a safe haven, now felt like a battlefield. Lily could sense the fear in her mother, even when she tried to hide it. Sophie, on the other hand, still didn't fully understand what was happening. She clung to the idea that everything would work out, that no one could take them away from their mother. Lily wished she could believe that, too. One afternoon, as she sat by the window watching the rain patter against the glass, Ethan entered the room. His expression was serious, but there was something else there, determination. We have a hearing, he said softly. In 3 days. Lily's stomach twisted. What does that mean? Ethan sighed, taking a seat beside her. It means we have to convince the court that you and Sophie belong with your mother and with me. Lily studied his face carefully. And if we don't? Ethan hesitated, then exhaled. Then the court could decide that Ryan has a legal claim to you. Lily clenched her fists. That's not fair. He's a stranger. He doesn't even care about us. Ethan nodded. I know. And that's why we won't let it happen. But Lily had lived enough life to know that wanting something wasn't always enough. The day of the hearing arrived too soon. The courthouse was an imposing building, its marble floors cold beneath their feet. Lily held tightly onto Sophie's hand as they followed Emily and Ethan inside. Ryan was already there, sitting beside his lawyer. He looked completely at ease, as if he had already won. Lily hated him. The judge was an older woman with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority. She looked over the paperwork, flipping through pages before finally speaking. I understand there is a dispute regarding the custody of Lily and Sophie Montgomery. She began. This case will determine whether they remain in the custody of their birth mother, Emily Carter, or if legal guardianship is granted to Ryan Montgomery. Ryan's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman who has the means and stability to provide these children with a secure future. Their mother, on the other hand, has been living on the streets, unable to provide even basic necessities. Emily's fists tightened in her lap, but she remained silent. Ethan's lawyer stood next. Your Honor, Emily Carter has done everything in her power to care for her daughters under difficult circumstances. Furthermore, Ethan Montgomery, who has recently learned he is the biological father of these children, is fully prepared to support and raise them. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Ryan's smirk faltered for the first time. The judge looked between them. Mr. Montgomery, is this true? Ethan stood. Yes, Your Honor. I didn't know about Lily and Sophie until recently. But now that I do, I intend to be a part of their lives. Ryan's lawyer scoffed. So, you just suddenly decided to play father? Ethan's jaw tightened. I decided to do what's right. Ryan finally spoke, his voice smooth and practiced. Your Honor, this man didn't even know these girls existed. I've been a part of this family for years. I have resources, connections. I can give them a life that she can't. He gestured toward Emily dismissively. Sophie whimpered, pressing closer to Lily. Then, to Lily's horror, the judge turned to them. Lily, Sophie, do you understand why you are here today? Lily's throat felt tight, but she nodded. The judge continued, her tone softer. I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you something very important. Lily already knew what was coming. If you had to choose, who would you want to live with? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Sophie's grip on her hand tightened, and when Lily looked down, she saw tears welling in her sister's eyes. Lily's mind raced. She didn't trust Ryan. She knew he was lying. But what if the court believed him? What if they were separated anyway? Wouldn't it be better if they chose to stay together, even if it meant choosing him? Her mother's voice broke through her thoughts. You don't have to be afraid. Sweetheart, tell the truth. Lily looked up, meeting Emily's eyes. There was no fear there, only love. No matter what happened, she knew her mother wouldn't give up on them. Lily took a deep breath and turned to the judge. I want to stay with my mom. Sophie's tiny voice echoed beside her. Me too. Ryan's expression darkened. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he barely seemed to hear it. The judge nodded. Thank you, girls. That will be all. The hearing lasted hours, but when the final decision came, it was swift. The judge looked over the case one last time before folding her hands together. Based on the evidence presented, as well as the wishes of the children, I see no reason to remove them from their mother's custody. Full parental rights will be granted to Emily Carter and Ethan Montgomery. Ryan shot to his feet. Your Honor, you can't be serious. This ruling is final. The judge interrupted, her tone sharp. I advise you to accept it and move on. Emily's breath hitched as the weight of the words sank in. They had won. She pulled Lily and Sophie into her arms, holding them tightly. Lily felt her mother's tears against her cheek, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were relief, joy. Ethan exhaled, nodding gratefully toward his lawyer. He looked at Lily, his eyes filled with something she hadn't seen before, pride. Ryan stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer scrambling after him. Lily watched him go, knowing deep down that this wasn't the last they'd see of him. But for now, they were safe, and for the first time in her life, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they finally had a place to call home. Session 7. Family Secrets Revealed. The courthouse was behind them, but the weight of everything that had happened still clung to Lily's chest. They had won, but the victory felt fragile, like a delicate thread that could snap at any moment. The tension in the air wasn't just about Ryan, it was something deeper. Something unspoken. Emily held onto Sophie's hand tightly as they stepped outside. Ethan walked beside them, his gaze cautious, scanning the area as if expecting trouble. Lily knew he wasn't just being paranoid. Ryan wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat easily. As they climbed into Ethan's car, Sophie was the first to break the silence. Does this mean we get to stay forever? Her voice was hopeful, but there was an edge of uncertainty. Emily let out a slow breath. Yes, sweetheart, we're safe now. Lily wanted to believe that, but something still didn't feel right. Back at the Montgomery estate, Maria greeted them at the door with a warm smile. Welcome home, she said, her eyes lingering on Emily with something unspoken. Lily caught it, the way Maria looked at her mother, the way she hesitated before stepping aside. It was like she knew something they didn't. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Lily sat beside her mother in their room. The house was quiet, but her thoughts weren't. Mama, she whispered. Emily turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. What is it, baby? Lily hesitated before asking. Why did Ryan think he had a right to take us? Why does he hate you so much? Emily's expression darkened, and for a long moment, she said nothing. Then, finally, she sighed. Because of the past, Lily. Because of things I thought I had escaped. Lily frowned. What things? Emily looked away, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. There's something I need to tell you, she admitted. Something I should have told you long ago. Lily's chest tightened. What is it? Emily took a deep breath. Ryan and Ethan aren't just brothers. They had very different lives growing up, but they were both raised in this house. Charles Montgomery, Ethan's father, was a powerful man. Controlling, dangerous. And Ryan was the son he actually wanted. Lily's stomach twisted. But Ethan was the mistake, Emily said softly. He was the child Charles never planned for. Ryan was the golden boy, the one Charles groomed to take over everything. But Ethan refused to be controlled. That's why he left. That's why he became different. Lily listened, her heart pounding. And you? How do you fit into this? Emily swallowed hard. Years ago, I was engaged to Ryan. Lily's breath caught. What? It was an arranged marriage. Emily said quickly. I didn't love him. I never did. But Charles wanted it. He wanted a perfect heir with a perfect wife. And for a while, I had no choice but to go along with it. Until I met Ethan. Lily's mind spun. She tried to picture her mother with Ryan. But all she could see was the coldness in his eyes. The way he had tried to take them away. So you left him, for Ethan? Emily nodded. Ethan was different. He was kind. He saw me for who I really was. Not just some pawn in his family's game. We fell in love. And when Charles found out, he was furious. Ryan was humiliated. He promised he would make us pay. Lily stared at her mother. Realization dawning. That's why we were on the streets. That's why we were running. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Yes, Charles made sure Ethan lost everything. He forced him out, cut him off, and when I got pregnant, I knew I had to disappear. If Ryan ever found out I was carrying Ethan's children, he would have taken you both from me the moment you were born. Lily felt sick. So all this time, he knew? Emily shook her head. I kept it a secret. But now that Ethan has claimed you as his, Ryan sees you as another piece of the game. He doesn't care about you, Lily. He only cares about power. And to him, you and Sophie are leverage. Lily clenched her fists. So what do we do? Emily exhaled. We stay together. We stay strong. And we don't let him win. Lily nodded. Her jaw set with determination. Then we fight. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ethan stepped inside, his face grim. We have a problem. Emily stood immediately. What happened? Ethan shut the door behind him. Ryan's already making his next move. He's challenging the ruling. He's claiming you're unfit to be a mother and that I'm unfit to be a father. He has connections. Emily. Powerful ones. Emily's face paled. How long do we have? A few weeks. Maybe less, Ethan said. But there's more. Ryan isn't working alone. Charles is backing him. Lily's breath hitched. Emily's hands trembled. That monster. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. Ethan stepped closer. Then we don't let him win. We gather evidence. We prove he's dangerous. We prove that you and the girls belong here, with me. Emily hesitated, then nodded. Whatever it takes. Lily glanced between them, her heart pounding. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Session 8. The confrontation with Ryan. The morning after Ethan's warning. The house felt different. The walls, once grand and intimidating, now felt like a fortress under siege. Every creak of the wooden floors, every shadow in the hallways, made Lily's stomach churn with unease. Emily hadn't slept. Lily could tell by the way her mother's hands trembled as she poured Sophie's orange juice at breakfast. Ethan sat at the head of the table, tense and brooding, staring at the phone as if waiting for it to ring with more bad news. The call came sooner than expected. Maria entered the dining room, her face pale. Mr. Montgomery, Ryan is here. He's demanding to speak with you. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Sophie froze with her spoon halfway to her mouth. Emily immediately pushed back her chair. He is not coming near my daughters. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's not getting past me. Stay here. I'll handle him. No. Emily's voice was firm. I need to hear what he has to say. Lily didn't want her mother anywhere near Ryan. But she also knew Emily wasn't the type to back down. Ethan hesitated before nodding, signaling Maria to lead the way. Lily grabbed Sophie's hand. Stay with me, okay? Sophie nodded, but her grip on Lily's fingers was so tight it hurt. Ryan was waiting in the grand entrance hall, standing near the staircase with his arms crossed. He looked as smug as ever. But there was something colder about him now. Something more dangerous. Ah, there you are, Ryan said smoothly, his eyes sweeping over Ethan. Then Emily. I was beginning to think you were hiding. Ethan stepped forward, his expression like stone. What do you want, Ryan? Ryan chuckled. Isn't it obvious? I want what's mine. Emily scoffed. They were never yours. Ryan tilted his head, smirking. And yet, here I am, holding all the power. Ethan's fists clenched. You lost in court. The judge ruled in our favor. You don't have a claim. Ryan's smirk didn't falter. Ah, but you see, the law is just a game. And I happen to be very good at playing it. My appeal is already in motion. And this time, I have more than just my father's influence backing me. Emily's face darkened. What are you talking about? Ryan reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded document. This, he said, waving it slightly, is a sworn statement from a witness who claims you're an unfit mother. A woman who says she saw you putting your children in danger multiple times while living on the streets. Emily's breath caught. That's a lie. Ryan shrugged. Maybe not, but the court won't see it that way. And since Ethan here didn't even know his daughters existed until recently, the judge might just decide that the only stable guardian in their lives is me. Lily's stomach turned. She saw her mother stiffen. But Emily didn't back down. You don't care about them. Ryan, you never did. You're just doing this to hurt me. Ryan's smirk deepened. Oh, Emily, you always were sharp. But this isn't just about you. This is about power. About control. And let's be honest, you've always been reckless. You're a fighter. Sure. But what happens when the court sees you as a desperate woman with no stability? Ethan took a step closer. His voice low and dangerous. If you think I'm going to let you take them, you're dumber than I thought. Ryan barely blinked. And what are you going to do? Ethan? Threaten me? That would only make my case stronger. He leaned in slightly. Face it, you were never meant to be the hero in this story. Ethan's hands balled into fists. But Emily placed a hand on his arm, stopping him from doing something that could be used against them. Lily had heard enough. She let go of Sophie's hand and stepped forward, her heart hammering in her chest. You think we'd ever want to live with you? She said. Her voice shaking but strong. You think some fake witness is going to make us forget everything you've done? We told the judge the truth. We told her we wanted to stay with our mom and Ethan. And guess what? That's never going to change. Ryan's gaze flickered down at her, something unreadable in his expression. Brave little thing, aren't you? He murmured. Just like your mother. She's a better person than you'll ever be. Lily snapped. And so is Ethan. Ryan's smirk twitched, as if her words actually struck a nerve. But he quickly masked it. We'll see how brave you are when the court takes you away. Ethan had had enough. He stepped between Ryan and Lily, shielding her with his body. You need to leave. Now. Ryan chuckled. Oh, I will. But this isn't over. He turned his gaze back to Emily. You should start packing, sweetheart, because soon enough, you'll be out of this house, and out of their lives. With that, he turned on his heel and strode toward the door. Maria was already waiting to escort him out. The moment he was gone, Ethan let out a slow breath, his whole body vibrating with restrained anger. Emily turned to Lily, her face filled with concern. Are you okay? Lily nodded, but inside, she was shaking. He's not going to stop. Is he? Ethan exhaled sharply. No, he won't. Sophie, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke up in a whisper. I don't want to go anywhere. Emily kneeled in front of them, cupping their faces. You won't, baby. I promise. We're going to fight this. We're going to prove Ryan is lying. Ethan nodded. And I'm going to make sure he doesn't win. No matter what it takes. Lily swallowed hard. Then what do we do next? Ethan's eyes darkened with resolve. We find out who Ryan's so-called witness is. And we make sure the truth comes out before he can destroy everything. Lily nodded. They had come too far to lose now. Ryan thought he could manipulate the system. But he underestimated them. This time, they were ready to fight back. Session 9. The Courtroom Showdown. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparations. Ethan's legal team worked tirelessly, gathering evidence to counter Ryan's claims. Emily was forced to relive painful memories as she recounted every hardship, every sacrifice she had made to keep her daughters safe. Lily could see the exhaustion in her mother's eyes. But Emily never wavered. The morning of the court hearing, the air inside the Montgomery estate was thick with tension. Maria had prepared breakfast, but no one had much of an appetite. Sophie picked at her toast, her usually bright eyes dulled by anxiety. Lily glanced at Ethan, who was reviewing documents with his lawyer. Do you think we're going to win? She asked quietly. Ethan looked up, his expression softening. We're going to fight, Lily, and we have the truth on our side. That's more powerful than anything Ryan can throw at us. Lily wanted to believe him. The courtroom was packed. The media had caught wind of the high-profile custody battle, and reporters whispered among themselves as the families entered. Ryan sat at his table, calm and confident. Next to him was his lawyer, an older man with a cold, calculating demeanor. Across from them, Emily, Ethan, and their legal team took their places. Lily and Sophie sat beside their mother, their small hands clasped together tightly. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, entered the room and silence fell. We are here today to address the appeal filed by Ryan Montgomery regarding the custody of Lily and Sophie Montgomery. She announced, "Mr. Montgomery, you may present your case." Ryan's lawyer stood, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "Your Honor, my client is a well-respected businessman with the financial means to provide these children with a stable and privileged life. In contrast, Ms. Carter has a history of instability, homelessness, and a lack of proper resources to raise them. Additionally, we have a witness who can testify to Ms. Carter's neglectful parenting." Lily's breath caught. Here it was, Ryan's so-called witness. The judge nodded. "Proceed." The courtroom doors opened, and a woman stepped inside. She was middle-aged, dressed in a conservative navy blue suit, her expression unreadable. Lily didn't recognize her, but Emily tensed immediately. "Ms. Carter." The judge addressed Emily. "Do you know this woman?" Emily exhaled sharply. "Yes. Her name is Patricia Lorne. She was a social worker assigned to me years ago." Lily's heart pounded. Ryan's lawyer gestured for Patricia to take the stand. "Ms. Lorne, please tell the court what you observed during your interactions with Ms. Carter and her daughters." Patricia cleared her throat, glancing briefly at Emily before speaking. "I first encountered Ms. Carter and her children while they were living in a shelter. At the time, she struggled to provide basic necessities. There were occasions when the children went without proper meals, and Ms. Carter was often absent, presumably looking for work." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Emily's lawyer stood. "Ms. Lorne, isn't it true that despite her hardships, Ms. Carter never abandoned her children? That she worked multiple jobs to ensure they had what little she could provide?" Patricia hesitated. "That may be true, but it doesn't change the fact that the children lived in unstable conditions." Ryan's lawyer pressed on. "Would you say that such an environment was harmful to their well-being?" Patricia hesitated again, then nodded. "Yes." Lily's hands clenched into fists. "No further questions," Ryan's lawyer said smugly. The judge turned to Emily's side. "Your witness." Ethan's lawyer stood. "Ms. Lorne, are you aware that despite their difficult circumstances, both Lily and Sophie were never taken from their mother's custody?" Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "Correct. That means that despite your concerns, no official action was ever taken to remove them from their mother's care. Would you agree that this suggests Ms. Carter did everything in her power to keep her children safe?" Patricia hesitated longer this time. "Yes, I suppose. One final question. Have you ever been in contact with Ryan Montgomery before today?" The question hit like a thunderclap. Patricia's eyes widened. "Objection," Ryan's lawyer barked. The judge raised a hand. "Overruled. Answer the question, Ms. Lorne." Patricia's throat bobbed. "Yes." A collective gasp swept through the room. "And what was the nature of your conversation with him?" Ethan's lawyer pressed. Patricia's face paled. He reached out to me weeks ago, asking if I'd be willing to testify on his behalf. He said it was to ensure the children had a stable future." "And did he offer you anything in exchange for your testimony?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed. Then, finally, she whispered, "Yes." The courtroom erupted into chaos. Reporters whispered furiously, and even the judge looked momentarily taken aback. Ryan's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a baseless accusation." The judge silenced him with a look before turning to Patricia. "Ms. Lorne, I suggest you clarify your answer immediately." Patricia's hands trembled. He promised financial compensation for my testimony. He said he needed leverage against Ethan Montgomery and Ms. Carter." Ryan's face turned red with fury. "That's a lie." The judge's gavel slammed down. "Enough." Silence fell once more. The judge took a deep breath, then turned to Patricia. "You realize you have just admitted to perjury?" Patricia nodded weakly. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at Ryan. "Mr. Montgomery, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Ryan stood, but for the first time, he had no smirk, no confidence. "This is absurd. I was only looking out for their best interests." The judge's expression hardened. "This court does not look kindly on manipulation and bribery. Effective immediately. Your appeal is denied, and a formal investigation into your actions will commence." Emily's breath hitched. Ethan closed his eyes in relief. Lily exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Ryan clenched his jaw, shooting Ethan a venomous glare before storming out of the courtroom. The judge turned to Emily and Ethan. "This case is officially closed. Full custody remains with the mother and legal guardian, Ethan Montgomery. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She reached for Lily and Sophie, pulling them into a tight embrace. Ethan placed a hand on Lily's back, a silent promise that they were safe. For the first time in forever, Lily felt like she could breathe. They had won, and Ryan was finally defeated. Session 10. A real family at last. The courtroom battle was over, but the weight of everything they had endured still lingered in the air. As they stepped out into the sunlight, Emily, Ethan, Lily, and Sophie stood together for a long moment, taking it all in. Lily had expected Ryan to fight until the very end, but his hurried exit from the courthouse told her everything she needed to know: he had lost. And for the first time, he knew it. Emily let out a shaky breath and turned to Ethan. "It's really over, isn't it?" Ethan nodded, his expression softer than Lily had ever seen it. "Yes, he can't touch them now. Not ever again." Sophie tugged at her mother's sleeve. "So, we get to stay together forever?" Emily knelt down and pulled Sophie and Lily into a tight embrace. "Yes, baby, forever." For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily felt something she hadn't dared to hope for: peace. The next few days were quiet, almost surreal. The tension that had clouded the Montgomery estate was gone, replaced by a calm that felt like a dream. Lily and Sophie explored the gardens, played in the grand hallways, and for the first time, they weren't afraid of what tomorrow might bring. One afternoon, Lily found herself sitting on the steps of the estate, watching the sun set behind the horizon. Ethan appeared beside her, hands in his pockets, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You're quiet today," he observed. Lily shrugged. "I guess I still don't believe it's real." Ethan chuckled softly. "I know the feeling." She hesitated, then looked up at him. "Are you really going to stay? Or will you disappear like before?" Ethan's face grew serious. "Lily, I know I wasn't there before. I can't change that, but I promise you, I'm not going anywhere now. I want to be your father. If you'll let me." Lily studied his face, looking for any trace of a lie, but all she saw was sincerity. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe him. A week later, Ethan did something none of them expected. He proposed to Emily. It happened in the garden, under the twinkling lights Ethan had set up with Maria's help. Lily and Sophie were there, sitting on the grass, watching as Ethan dropped to one knee in front of their mother. "Emily," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "we've been through so much, and I know I can never make up for lost time. But I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to fight alone again. I want to be your husband. I want to be the father our daughters deserve. Will you marry me?" Lily saw the tears in her mother's eyes before she even answered. Emily glanced at them, her daughters, before nodding. "Yes, yes, of course." Sophie squealed in delight, launching herself into Emily's arms. Lily smiled, watching as Ethan slipped a ring onto her mother's finger. For the first time, their family was complete. The wedding was small but perfect. Maria helped organize everything, making sure it was intimate and filled with love. Lily and Sophie wore matching dresses, walking down the aisle as flower girls. Emily glowed with happiness, and Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. As they exchanged vows, Lily looked around at the people gathered. For so long, she had believed that families were only made of blood. But now, she realized something else. Family was about love, about choosing to stand by one another no matter what. And for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. Months later, Ethan finalized the adoption papers, making it official. Lily and Sophie were now legally his daughters. The night after the papers were signed, Ethan found Lily sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He sat beside her, silent for a moment before saying, "I meant it, you know. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Lily glanced at him. "I know." Ethan hesitated before placing something in her hands. She looked down and saw a necklace with a small charm attached, a simple gold heart. "I got one for Sophie, too. It's a reminder," Ethan said, "that no matter what happens, you'll always have a family. You'll always have a home." Lily closed her fingers around the charm, her heart swelling. For the first time in her life, she truly believed it. She was home. True happiness. The seasons change, bringing new beginnings with them. The Montgomery estate, once a place filled with tension and uncertainty, now felt like a true home. Laughter echoed in the halls. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air. and warmth settled into every corner. Lily sat on the porch, watching Sophie chase butterflies across the garden. The younger girl's giggles rang through the air, her carefree joy a stark contrast to the fear they had once lived with. Ethan stepped outside, a cup of tea in his hands. "You seem deep in thought." Lily glanced at him and smiled. "Just thinking about how different everything is. It doesn't feel real sometimes." Ethan took a seat beside her. "It is real, and it's yours to keep." She looked up at him, searching his face. "Do you ever regret it? Fighting for us?" Ethan's expression softened. "Never. If anything, I regret not finding you sooner." Lily let his words sink in. She had spent so long expecting love to come with conditions, with fear, but with Ethan, with her mother, with Sophie, love was something different. It was safe. It was forever. Inside the house, Emily was finishing up dinner. She turned when she heard Sophie's footsteps running into the kitchen. "Mama, can we have dessert first tonight?" Emily chuckled. "You know the rules, sweetheart. Dinner first." Sophie pouted, but Ethan swooped in, lifting her onto his shoulders. "Maybe just one cookie?" Emily rolled her eyes playfully. "You're going to spoil them." Ethan winked. "That's the plan." Lily watched the exchange, her heart full. This was what family looked like, not just the perfect moments, but the little ones, the laughter, the teasing, the togetherness. As they sat down for dinner, she glanced at Sophie, who was stuffing her face with mashed potatoes, and her mother, who was smiling brighter than she had in years. Then she looked at Ethan, the man who had become their protector, their father. He caught her staring and raised an eyebrow. "What's on your mind, kiddo?" Lily hesitated for only a second before she spoke the words she had been holding in for so long. "Can I call you Dad?" Ethan froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Silence filled the room for just a moment before a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. His eyes softened as he nodded. "I'd like that." Lily smiled back, feeling something inside her settle for the first time in her life. She had a father, she had a home, and she had a future filled with love. They had won more than a legal battle. They had found a real family. As the night settled in, Lily stood by her bedroom window, looking out at the stars. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. She turned off the light, climbed into bed beside Sophie, and let herself dream, not of a different life, but of the beautiful one she finally had. A home, a family, a place where she truly belonged. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Millionaire Love Stories. Have love and resilience ever changed your life? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Subscribe for more stories of love, transformation, and the power of connection. Together, let's believe in the magic of love.